All right, we're all set. Good afternoon. This is NPR News. I'm Brandt Williams, and we're coming to you from the UBS Forum here at NPR headquarters for a Minneapolis mayoral debate. Next week brings an end to the 2025 campaign. Minneapolis voters can cast their ballot for mayor by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 4th. That's next Tuesday, of course. We might not know that night who gets the job because the city uses ranked choice voting. It could take multiple rounds to determine a winner. 15 candidates have their names on the mayoral ballot, but only a fraction appear to be true contenders. So along with our partners at the Minnesota Star Tribune, we're here with the leading candidates. They are two-term incumbent Jacob Frey, State Senator Omar Fateh, business owner and attorney Jazz Hampton, and Minister DeWayne Davis. They've agreed to cross city lines into St. Paul for our debate, so we really appreciate your time. First of all, there aren't a lot of ground rules. There's no hard clock, but please keep your answers as brief as you can because there are 4 of you with us. We reserve the right to follow up and will offer space for responses where appropriate. Here's one thing we'll insist on. Please don't talk over your rivals because it will prevent listeners from hearing what you're trying to get across. With me today to help ask the questions is Star Tribune Metro columnist Eric Roper. He's covered city politics at the paper for years. I've also spent a few years out in the City Hall beat and now edit a team with Minneapolis politics at the forefront. So Eric, thanks for joining me, and let's go ahead and get started with our first question.
Thanks, Brandt. Thanks for everybody for joining us here today. So we're going to launch right into public safety, which has been a big topic in this campaign, and sort of zoom in on one portion of that. Open drug use and open drug dealing have become a pretty visible problem, and it's particularly impacting commercial corridors around the city. So let's zoom into a specific incident, and Mayor Frey, I want to start with you, and then we're going to go to the other candidates. You oversee the police department. So I understand there are staffing shortages, but there was a major drug market off of the Midtown Greenway this summer that was very well known. I saw it, the police department was aware of it, and yet nothing was done about it, and then it became the site of a mass shooting. And so I'm wondering, despite staffing shortages in the police department, why was it not a priority to bust up that drug market before it became the site of a mass shooting?
When you call it a drug market, that's exactly the correct term. And we have a multi-jurisdictional approach to dealing with some of the most difficult issues that arise in Minneapolis. And yes, it involves going out to either the encampment or the open-air drug market. We provide service, we provide care, we provide compassion and culturally sensitive treatment. And yes, we also shut the drug market down, which was the case with this particular one. We worked with our state partners, I believe it's on MnDOT land, to make sure that that was temporarily fenced off. And we also need to be treating this issue from the root. And that means preventing people from getting addicted from the very beginning. That means working with our U.S. attorney to make sure that we're going after the perpetrators of both some of these violent crimes who also bring drugs into the city at times by the trunkload.
But it was shut down after the shooting. I'm just kind of curious why it was allowed to get to that point.
What we were doing on a near daily basis is removing people from that space so that we were able to clean. We were trying to investigate the issue with a number of multi-jurisdictional partners, not to prosecute and criminalize addiction, but to prosecute and criminalize the people that are preying on vulnerable individuals. That's the direction that we are going to make sure that we're going after some of these individuals that have preyed upon people in our city. We're dealing with a drug in fentanyl that is 100 times more potent than crack. We're dealing with a drug in fentanyl that takes a hold of your brain like nothing that we've ever seen before. But here's the thing. We also have a solution to how we're going to work through it with our partners at the county and the state.
I want to hear from the other candidates now. I mean, do you believe that this problem is primarily due to an understaffed police department? And do you have sort of another approach that you would offer to it? And I want to start with you, Jazz.
First of all, thank you all for doing this and having us here. I absolutely think that it is a yes and situation. Yes, I think we do need more resources within our police department and all of public safety. Yes, we need specific officers that are trained in this work. And yes, we need to leverage technology at a higher level. The amount of times that that you might walk by or drive by a camera or a shot spotter. These are things that we can visibly detect when individuals are consistently victimizing people. I agree with the word, victimizing people, and the addiction is hard. And we have to be addressing the people that are continuing to perpetrate the addiction in this moment, and those are those individuals. We should have dedicated teams addressing that kind of open drug market. We should have dedicated teams addressing things like the broken windows in this moment as well. And that is what I'm looking to do with our public safety system. All too often, people aren't worried about their physical safety when they're walking through downtown Minneapolis or another corridor in our city. What they're worried about is, if I call when I see this, is someone going to go and do something about it? And that is what I want to bolster in this moment. And of course, get the help and the deep, deep need for help to those that are addicted in this time as well. Not to prosecute individuals or persecute individuals that are having addiction crisis moments, but to prosecute individuals that are selling the drugs leading to that moment.
Mm-hmm. Reverend Davis?
I dealt with this issue very personally, and our church is located in the Stevens Square community, and we saw that open-air drug transactions right across the street and right across where we welcome people into our Groveland food shelf. And so we spent many, many years, at least 3 years, directly talking to the 5th Precinct captain, talking about making sure that we had police patrolling the area. We wanted some of the deterrence of the presence of a police, and we encountered that the police are indeed understaffed. And certainly we've got to make sure that we have the police force that we need to make sure that they are patrolling, that they are investigating, that they are responding to emergency. But here was another issue that we discovered in all of our conversations with the 5th Precinct captain and all of our requests for police presence to interfere with it. We also discovered that this was where the other parts of our community safety system were not working as efficiently or as well, and that is violence interruption. We discovered that we were missing one of those important parts of dealing with this, that community-led violence intervention. And so one of the things that I had wanted really the mayor to focus on and the city to focus on is really fully resourcing violence interruption, making sure that we had ways of collecting data, evaluating data, so that we can have a way to target what's happening in that neighborhood. And so one of the things that we ran into was that the police knew this was happening. They were understaffed, but we had no other support or partners that could sort of help us direct where we need to be looking at. Are there specific people we should be looking at? Are there certain entities that are facilitating this kind of, we were just missing a piece of public safety that we really need to make sure we address these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Senator Fateh?
Yeah, what we're seeing right now with our city is a strategic failure. We need to make sure that when neighbors call 911, that they get the right response at the right time. The city's own report showed that last year, nearly half of 911 calls to MPD can be diverted away from police, meaning we can have alternatives respond. And why is that important? Well, number one, that clicks very well with what I heard at the Capitol from law enforcement and other jurisdictions, especially saying that we can't respond to every single call every single time. We're being stretched out too thin. And if we're able to take away nearly half of their caseload, then we can have law enforcement focus on violent crime, on drug trafficking, on human trafficking, clearing the case backlog, not taking away investigators from the caseload or in their investigatory work. And so I think that's the right approach that we need to take.
I'd like to continue on gun violence in the same vein. There's been a decline in the number of shots fired calls and the number of people wounded in the city of Minneapolis compared to the same time last year. However, here in St. Paul, there's been a significant drop in shootings and killings, which public safety officials say is due to dedicated resources to investigating and solving non-fatal shootings. Why is Minneapolis, the clearance rate in Minneapolis for gun violence cases higher than it is in the neighbor here in St. Paul. And I'm going to start with you, Reverend Davis.
I think your question presupposes something that I think we have to put the focus on. We simply, again, we are understaffed, but we also have pressed our police department into work that they probably shouldn't be doing. And this is why it's so critically important to make sure that every other part of the public safety matrix is fully resourced and operating at full capacity. I'll give you an example. Again, if we don't have real ways of understanding, especially through community-led violence intervention, where people know who might have access. In my neighborhood of North Minneapolis, that is the critical work that violence interrupters do. Our issue is interpersonal violence and access to guns. And the one way to interfere with that is the ability of those violence interrupters to not only be resourced to do it, but to share that information with the police department. And again, free the police department to focus on investigations, to focus on clearances. We know in other jurisdictions that's the case that we have. What has to happen is that every part has to be fully resourced. But I'll go even further. I fear what we don't have, and as I served as co-chair of the Community Safety Work Group, I fear that we are not also getting the benefit of an interagency collaboration, meaning I would task the Public Safety Commissioner to work with the Chief of Police for a comprehensive violence intervention and reduction plan that helps us know where we need to focus, where the police need to focus on investigations,
right,
where violence interrupters need to focus on making sure that people aren't getting violent.
I want to get Mayor Frey to respond to that. I mean, this is under your watch. How do you respond to what the Reverend is saying, and generally on when it comes to the topic of solving these non-fatal shootings?
We do have a comprehensive approach to public safety. I was the first mayor in this city to fully build it out, and we continue that work going forward. We now have 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week mental health response. We try to divert as much as possible work away from the police department so that they are able to focus on the critical work of violence. And we do work with a number of other jurisdictional partners. A great example is what's happening on the north side. Right now, shootings on the north side are lowest than they have ever been on record, or at least since 2007. That's because of work that we have done in partnership with community, working with moms and grandmoms to sort out difficult situations before they arise, working with our county, our sheriff, and of course our U.S. attorney with an officer embedded in them to make sure that we're arresting perpetrators of violent crime. And the numbers speak for themselves. And at the same time, we do need more police officers and investigators. This is a numbers issue, and let's be clear, we have fewer officers per capita than virtually any city in the entire country. We are working to up those numbers. We're seeing a 135% increase in applications. Others would want to lower that number. We want to see an increase.
Jazz Hampton, same to you. We're talking about resources. We're talking about investigating non-fatal shootings as a way to bring down overall gun violence in the city. How do you respond?
First, I actually would disagree with the underlying premise a little bit, and let me explain that. In the last 4 years, the average yearly gunshot wound victims is around 498 individuals per year. In the 4 years leading up to 2017, that number was around 280. That is a much larger number per year on the average within our city. And yes, it is spread apart across different parts of our city, and that's what we need to address. And there's two things we need to do in this moment. The first is, yes, we are woefully understaffed when it comes to police officers that can investigate and do this work. We have to staff up at a level that we are not right now, and we haven't been for a few years. But on the other end, we also have to address the underlying issues that lead folks into this situation. We have to improve the amount of before and after school support we have for our students in Minneapolis. We have to expand the time that we give to students with rec hours and programs and opportunities. Those are the things like in Baltimore that they have done that not only showed success in the short term, but also the long term.
I'll get to you in a minute, Mr. Mayor Frey. Omar Fateh, I want you to also address this disparity between the city of St. Paul and their focus on solving these non-fatal shootings and Minneapolis not seeming to have the same resources dedicated to that type of investigation. How do you respond?
Absolutely, and that's why I say it's a strategic failure when the city's own report shows that nearly half of 911 calls can be diverted away. we're able to free up resources from our officers so that they can focus on the issues that you just outlined right now. I worked at the Capitol with my colleagues to bring in $19 million in public safety aid so that we can bolster and beef up those alternatives to policing so that we can make sure that our officers can focus on violent crime. But we got to take a more holistic approach in this as well. We got to, when we talk about public safety, we talk about drug trafficking, we're talking about gun violence, we got to be more proactive also. We got to tackle the issue of poverty, ensuring that people have a livable wage, ensuring that people have a home, ensuring that we're supporting our public school system, making sure that we're having an ambitious youth agenda so that we can think more long-term, having youth programming, but also providing youth jobs, like the program I supported at the Capitol to expand the Teamworks program, a few $1 million to hire our teens within our recreation centers and our parks throughout the city. I think that's the approach we need to take long-term.
Thank you very much.
And well, I was just curious, Mayor Frey, can you respond to this 47% number? Because this comes up in forums all the time. It's an NYU, it comes from the NYU study. You know, what do you think? Do you think that's a realistic number?
I'm sorry, it's 47%.
47%, but this is the nearly half number of like the number of 911 calls that would be candidates for non-sworn response. Like, this is getting cited all over the campaign trail. Do you think it's realistic?
I can address it. So there is no dispute that we need to be building out a comprehensive system for public safety, and we're doing that. There is no dispute that we need to invest in youth recreation. And by the way, under my administration, we have invested more in youth recreation in our park board than ever before. It's nearly $3 million on an annual basis to make sure that we've got youth rec in our parks. And here is the truth. We also need more police officers to be able to handle these situations. As I said, when you have less officers per capita than virtually any city in the country, you need to do the necessary work to increase that. Senator Omar Fateh has clearly stated that he was going to defund the police.
Thank you.
That is not the right route that we need to be going right now. We need to increase the number of officers that want to protect and serve our city, and we can do the additional work around creating
Thank
systemic
you, Mr.
change.
Mayor. I think we need to move on. We're gonna get to housing now. This is we've got a lot of very large topics that we want to be able to cover and do them well. So, our next question.
Yeah, housing. So the development boom in Minneapolis has subsided. And the question is, how would you as mayor accelerate the construction of new housing, and especially deeply affordable housing, which often requires partnerships with the county, the state? And sort of a tack-on question to that is, do you believe that the public housing levy should be increased from its current level? So we can start with, I guess, Senator Fateh, we haven't started with you yet.
Absolutely. To the last part for the public housing levy, I was the legislator that carried legislation successfully for $5 million for Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, which was historic. It never happened before. And so I really believe that we need to increase our funding for public housing so folks not only have a place to stay, but quality conditions. Right now, there's hundreds of millions of dollars in backlog in terms of how much revitalization, how much renovation has to occur just to get them back to the fair level. And I think that the city needs to be more proactive in doing that. I want to make sure that we're building more affordable, truly affordable housing. I was honored to carry, again, legislation at the Capitol to protect and defend the Minneapolis 2040 plan so that we can clear that backlog that was caused by the lawsuit to ensure we're building more affordable housing as well. But when we're talking about that, we need to talk also about more community ownership, things like the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, Community Opportunity to Purchase Act. Some of the bigger issues we've seen in our city is that we have large out-of-state entities from Atlanta to California to New York, buying up large swaths of property. And their motive isn't to keep people housed or to have affordable housing, but to make a profit. And when we've seen that, we've seen the quality of housing substantially go down. I got to tour one of the locations in Loring Park, in which when we went there, the front door was broken down, all the mailboxes were broken, so folks had to go to their local post office. There was black mold. Folks
You
that were
always
unhoused.
throughout the campaign
Yeah.
cited the same apartment building.
Yes.
I've noticed. Is that
Yeah.
was it? It seems like it was a very
There's three of them.
memorable moment for you.
There are three of them, and the thing is that's not the only case. And when I got to tour the public housing buildings, also, which is why I carried that legislation, there was times when folks didn't even have AC in the summertime, where we had our elders literally suffering in the heat.
Okay.
And so we need to take a more leadership role at the city level to protect our most vulnerable.
Reverend Davis?
Yes, and you're speaking to something too. You're saying that the construction boom is eased a little bit, and you're seeing the reason we're in this situation now is because this city, but cities across the United States, we've been relying on incentivizing private development. And in and of itself, that's okay. We have a supply issue. We need to build many units. We make sure that people can have access to housing. But we have, I think, forfeited our responsibility to incentivize or have that much energy and focus on public and nonprofit development of housing. And this is where it's going to require, as you, in the premise of your question, much more engagement with the county in the state. In essence, what I'm talking about here is how are we going to use our power of the purse, but also our regulatory power to be in relationship with some nonprofit and public developers to build more units. We have some great ones, Beacon Housing, we have Common Bonds, we have Project for Pride and Living, we have Claire Housing. These are really good public developers. The question is, are we making sure that they have access to capital? Are we working with the county to talk about how can we bolster the city's housing trust fund, which is now just a gap financing? At this particular moment, we need to make sure that we're using every tool in our toolkit at the city level to encourage nonprofit and public developers so that we can target people at 0 to 30 EMI, that we can create an opportunity for people to probably purchase and own their property, even if they never make that kind of money to do so. This is real effort that we have to go through now.
Great. Jazz?
Yeah, when I talk to organizations and individuals, when they talk about taxes, they'll first say, yes, I'm frustrated that the levy has gone up on me as an individual. But you know what they say next? That's okay if I feel like these services are going to go up in concert, if we're actually providing enough housing that those dollars will go towards. And as mayor, that's what I'm committing and want to do. If the levy is going to go up to have more affordable housing, we need to build at a much, much deeper rate. In the Twin Cities, generally, we have tens of thousands of needs for this affordable housing. And there's things beyond just private and public partnerships which we need to do. There are code updates for individuals that own homes that have additional dwellings on the bottom half that don't count as a duplex because of stairs or other zoning requirements that we can update and unlock hundreds of units at a time. These are steps that we have to take along with the very obvious ones. Yes, we have to ensure that we're putting more dollars into the Affordable Housing Trust. Yes, we have to ensure that there's deeper partnership with nonprofits as well. But the rate of growth right now is just not high enough.
Okay. Mayor?
Minneapolis is broadly recognized as among the #1 housing cities in the entire country. We are producing 8.5 times the amount of deeply affordable homes since before I took office. We have managed to keep rent down more than virtually any city in the country, not through rent control, as Senator Fateh has supported, but by increasing the supply and subsidizing. Yes, subsidizing nonprofit developers, ranging from Common Bond to Claire Housing to Project and Pride and Living, and also focusing on that deeply affordable housing so that people who are experiencing homelessness can pull themselves out. Minneapolis is among the only cities in the country comparable to ours that is seeing a dramatic decrease in homelessness and unsheltered homelessness, whereas elsewhere it's going up. Does that mean the job is done? No, it doesn't. Do we need to expand on public housing? Yes, we do. And I have invested more in Minneapolis public housing than any mayor I'm aware of in history. We have increased it 5-fold to $5 million, not one time, but annually, because we recognize the importance of it.
Real quick, Jazz, on the campaign trail, you've talked about this 8.5 times figure. Can you, in 20 seconds, can you just sort of respond to that?
Yeah, speaking of 20, I think it was 29 units that were produced prior to the time that the mayor's talking about. And if you 8.5 times that, that's around 290 units.
We're talking about annually?
Annually, that's right.
290 units annually.
And that is the deeply affordable.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Excuse me. Sorry. And that is what I'm talking about when I say I'm glad that we've made progress, but we need to make more at this time. Because I think we agree that 290 a year is not quite enough.
Thank you. Brandt?
Right. We're going to go on to the next question here just to keep things moving along and make sure we get a chance to have a full conversation about many different topics. I'm going to go to downtown development. We're looking at particularly Nicollet Mall. I mean, it's largely regarded as one of the city's gems. Obviously, a lot of people are familiar with the Mary Tyler Moore statue down there and so many other recognizable features. I want to ask each of you, what's your plan for reviving Nicollet Mall? And specifically, since most of you oppose removing the buses, I want you also to address that as well. And I'm going to start with Omar Fateh.
Yeah, for the second piece of that, I do not support removing buses off of Nicollet Mall. I think that for our friends that ride transit, for our workers, for our neighbors that want to get in and out of downtown, that's not an option in which I would like to see us pursue. I would like to see us maintain that. I would like to see us expand on our Vibrant Storefronts initiative, making sure that we're partnering also with our state to bring in some funding to make sure that we're filling in some of the storefronts that are empty. But I want to fill it with local options, local businesses here that'll keep our community thriving. We know that a healthy, thriving downtown is critical for our local economy, and we cannot continue to function without investing and making sure that downtown is healthy. And that includes making sure that it's more walkable, preserving our transit, and ensuring that we're creating ways which we bring more people downtown. And that includes some of these units in which we can create public housing, or not public housing, affordable housing, because having more people downtown, especially near transit, having more transit-oriented density, I think that's the right approach we need to take as a city.
Senator, quickly, just when you talk about rebuilding that business base downtown on Nicollet Mall, you're going to have to work with some businesses who may not want to have. There are certain types of regulations that the City Council is proposing. How would you work with business owners and the council to make sure that it's worth it for these businesses to open on Nicollet Mall?
The same way I've worked with folks at the Capitol. Whenever you have an idea, you're going to come with people that disagree with you, especially certain stakeholders in which you might even have strong disagreements. But as a senator, I've learned that you're not always going to get everything what you want, but you can take a very good first step. And that includes bringing everyone to the table, making sure that every stakeholder is valued and listened to. As mayor, I'll take the same approach. I would meet regularly with the business owners downtown, the downtown council, and not only work with them, but learn from them. I think there's a healthy way of saying we're not always going to get it right. So that might take some education as well.
Jazz Hampton, same question to you.
Yeah, I think if we're going to be removing buses, which I do not think we should be doing, what we would be doing is treating the underlying symptom, or treating the symptom and not the underlying issue. We need to ensure that it is vibrant on Nicollet Mall. And how can we do that? I grew up with a mom that owned a restaurant my entire life. I think she would even admit they never did the best financially. But now, even teaching entrepreneurial finance, I know how to support small businesses when they're trying to go. And here are some of the things that we need to do. We need to ensure that we're reducing the amount of time it takes for permitting and for inspections. So if someone says, yes, I can parse off this really big piece of land, but it'll be expensive if it takes too long, we can incentivize those landowners to say, we will be right here with you. We need this building to get done. And then we can partner doing the grant opportunities or low barrier opportunities to bring more businesses into that corridor. Because more lively and more businesses means more people will live there, and it means it will keep growing stronger. I used to live on 9th in Portland, and the CVS below my building closed. And then the coffee shop across the street closed, and then we moved because we didn't have the walkability that we are living there for. Right. That's what we need to improve on in this moment.
Mayor Frey, same question to you about Nicollet Mall development and the buses.
So I was the council member of North Loop before it was the North Loop where it was today. And when I took office, we talked about putting everything in one neighborhood, from commercial to light industrial, from residential to small and local businesses, restaurants, and bars. And when you do that, you have a vibrancy. You have a constant inflow and outflow of people through the space at all times of the day and the night. That is the same kind of dynamic that we can create on Nicollet Mall. Not just a bunch of big vanilla conglomerates with massive square footage. We can add more doors to each block. We can allow small and local businesses to set up shop and pay the rent. So it's not just going to be the Sports Authority and the Barnes and Noble and, yeah, the Macy's and the Daytons of the past, but it'll be the kind of dynamic where you walk down the street and you can get a drink, go out to dinner, you can buy a coat, you can head over then to a Twins game or the theater.
I mean,
that's the dynamic
given that you
we can
are
create.
mayor, how are we dealing with this more doors issue, which is something I'm interested in
I
too.
know.
But like, how are we dealing with that? I mean, is there action happening?
We are going to be working with building owners and managers, not just to push them in that direction, but also talk about how they can, in fact, have multiple leases per building. Obviously, it's difficult to go from one lease per floor to many leases per floor, but that is something we can do. And actually, we've seen success on the east side and in North Loop. And if you combine that, yes, with a pedestrianized Nicollet, which I support, you could move the buses just one block over, which, by the way, would increase the pace of public transportation itself. Here's the thing. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. We got to make the change. We can't cling white-knuckled to what once was in downtown. We got to move forward.
Reverend Davis, same question to you about Nicollet Mall.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear the mayor say that we can't do the same thing. And that is the beauty of what North Loop was, where there was creativity, there was an open canvas, and we talked about doing things differently, including things like, having a site for multiple restaurants in a place like something called Gray's. That was a new way of thinking about how to use property and use land. And that's exactly what we need to bring downtown. That is breaking up those parcels, which I'm glad to hear, making sure, but also going back to some ways of encouraging and incentivizing small business to have smaller parcels that they will feel comfortable going into downtown. But finally, I've talked to so many small business, and it comes back down to one other thing, small business and some of the residents of Minneapolis. We have to get our hands around safety. We have to get make people know and believe and have a public safety system that people know that when they come downtown, they're going to be safe and they can enjoy it, and they can enjoy it freely. And that's important too, because we need that community safety major to be working at full force so that people who work downtown are not enlisted to do things that they are not tasked to do. And so all of that works together. All of those ideas about smaller parcels. Also, again, thinking creatively, working with those large property owners to talk about how we can turn this into convening hubs, innovation hubs, things that we haven't been thinking about previously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next question. Eric.
So this is about business regulation. So my colleague Sharon Jackson had a story in 2024 in the Minnesota Star Tribune, and it talked in there about how restaurateurs saying that regulations in Minneapolis make it much more attractive to open a restaurant in the suburbs. So looking beyond just restaurants, do you believe that the city needs to get out of the way more to encourage business development? And let's start with you, Jazz.
Actually, I don't think we need to get out of the way. I think we need to lean into the conversation more and actually have it at a high level. If business owners are telling us that in their reporting that they are more likely to open a restaurant or a business outside of the city of Minneapolis, we need to understand financially what's preventing them from doing this. I do not think that every other city across the country is having the same level of issues because we are not able to get to the table as we should right now. The Labor Standards Board was an idea that was presented, and the uneven nature of the people that would compose that board was, I think, one of the sticking points. That was the idea, so we could get to the table, hear the concern, and build a solution that actually works. I don't think finding middle ground is soft or weak. I think it is collecting additional information and making an informed decision in that moment. We don't need to get out of the way. We need to bring them to the table and all be there collectively. And we have fallen short of that in the city of Minneapolis. And I talk to restaurant owners, I talk to coffee shop owners, and what they're saying is we just want to be able to express our concern, have it being heard, and then make regulation based upon that. Because at the end of the day, they want their employees and our city to be successful as well.
And when you have supported the Labor Standards Board as it was passed by the council?
I love this question.
Okay,
It is the example of a lot of questions were asked. I wouldn't have had that piece of paper in front of me. I would have gone back in and kept fighting until I get to the place that I think we can all agree.
Right.
I do not think it should have been unbalanced, to be clear, but I think I could have gone back in that room and found a piece of paper we all could have agreed on.
Mayor Frey?
I don't deal with these situations as hypotheticals. We worked hard to find a balanced approach. We proposed approach after approach, and yes, we did work to find middle ground. There wasn't compromise on that one. And there's a reason that small local businesses throughout the city are supporting my campaign, because we listened. We stood up when it was not necessarily politically expedient to do so. I did veto a labor standards board, and we are finding ways, to your question, of reducing the regulation to make sure that red tape is cut and small local businesses can open. But it's not just having them open, it's making sure that they can flourish. We're investing in grant proposals to make sure that they can better afford a mop basin or put up a facade grant improvement. We're working with our Ownership and Opportunity Fund to make sure that they can own not just the business, but also the underlying real estate, so that when their hard work is realized in the form of equity gains, they realize it themselves rather than getting the boot from the place that they made wonderful to begin with.
Yeah.
This is the kind of work that is hard. It is not easy, but we are providing real solutions to move the city forward.
Senator Fateh?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I want to support a strong Office of Small Business or Department of Small Business. And that's because what I'm hearing right now from local businesses is that they're not brought into the decision-making process. When we're providing policy and implementing policy, especially on areas like, for example, Hennepin Avenue, where construction led to less foot traffic for some businesses, including one that reached out to my office.
Well, actually, just specifically to this question for you, I want to ask about you have proposed on your vision mandating scheduling policies on city businesses and also a $20 minimum wage.
Absolutely.
So some of these are things that businesses are not currently dealing with, but would be. So can you talk to the fact that you're proposing additional regulations in what you're in your agenda?
Absolutely. So we deserve to have a city, we can lead as a city on having a strong minimum wage. And our vision includes increasing that minimum wage to $20 an hour by 2028 so that all of our workers can have the sources they need to pay for rent, buy food, support their kids. And if we don't, then they're going to have to rely on more government support, social services. And so I think that...
And how about on the scheduling? Because that was actually pulled from the Working Families agenda about 10 years ago because of business opposition.
Well, there's a few things. Number one, to complete the last one, I think that one job should be enough. Every single person deserves to have a livable wage, period, no matter the worker. Number two, I do support things like clopen, for example. Workers, if they're closing at night, they shouldn't be opening in the morning the next morning. I think that's unhealthy.
Okay.
It allows them to keep their health intact. It allows the businesses to function more when workers are able to have better attendance and so on. But that's not anti-business. I think that actually supports businesses and the local economy even more. But to the last...
But we got to move to Reverend Davis because we're behind time here. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to talk about, again, some of the things that the mayor talked about, grant programs and all that. I've talked to so many businesses that talked about hearing about all of these grant programs, but never having any information from the city about how to get them, never knowing who's getting them and how much is in the fund. And so even when we have these promising programs that were coming up, the question is, are we in relationship with business in a way that people know what their access to, know what grant programs they're access to? We also are running into, we just saw in the Minneapolis joint disparity study that women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses do not even know what opportunities there are to participate in as subcontractors for prime contractors. They do not know the process of how to bid for public sector work. So my point is, even with this easing regulation, once we do that, we've got to do other things. One, we've got to make sure that things like licensing and permitting are understood. And then we've got to make sure that we are in conversation, real relationship with these small businesses, finding out what they need. That also goes to the point where you were talking about regulation. I know that there's one business that just opened up, is in front of regulation and is unionizing his workers in a coffee shop, even before anything is required of that. So the question is, how can we learn from a business that wants to do well for their workers? How can we help and incentivize that? In essence, regulation doesn't have to be a sledgehammer. We can be in relationship and conversations with these people to how to make sure that they are thriving, but also that we are protecting workers or providing jobs for workers.
Right. Quick question for Jazz Hampton, Jacob Frey, and DeWayne Davis about this $20 minimum wage. Jazz Hampton, do you think that's a good idea? Is that something you'd support as mayor?
Setting a minimum wage for several years out without knowing where inflation goes or what changes and the hurt, I do not think is a good idea in this moment.
Mayor Frey.
You can't just commit to a minimum wage without doing the necessary engagement and research. I was part of the ordinance that instituted the $15 minimum wage. Any changes to it would have to go through the same process.
Okay. Reverend Davis?
Same thing. Let's have full conversation. Let's watch what's going on and be able to move when we need to and make that decision when it comes to us.
Okay. We're going to move on to our next question. We're going to talk property taxes here. And I'm just going to start by asking, I'm going to premise my question with this. There's been a recent City Commission report which found that Minneapolis generates less revenue per capita than many peer cities. Do you believe in principle that the city should implement an income tax? If not, do you support other revenue options that were cited in the report, including an excise tax, land transfer taxes, service fees, business tax, congestion pricing, all kinds of different things? This is out to the group, but actually I'll start with the mayor. How do you feel about the possibility of implementing a income tax on Minneapolis residents?
We should not be levying an additional income tax through the city. However, there are a number of things that we need to be doing to make sure that we are good fiscal stewards of the people's dollar. First, we've got to operate efficiently. I took what was an unprecedented step of vetoing the budget the last year. Why? Because it didn't make sense for the people of the city. It dramatically increased spending. It took money away from some of the basic and core services that we need to do, like turning on the street lights and hiring more police. And it dealt it out largely to nonprofits. That is not the first thing that we should be doing when we're in a budget crunch. But the second thing is we need to be generating additional revenue sources. How do we do that? One, we make sure that we've got mechanisms to generate development. We also work with the legislature.
Right.
Local government aid was cut drastically back during the Pawlenty administration. And so we have a robust plan along with our lobbyists to make sure that we're bringing in the necessary money. I'll give you one more fact. For every $3 that Minneapolis gives out to the rest of the state, we get one back.
Right.
So we appreciate that we need to support other towns, but we also need to make sure that Minneapolis gets its fair share.
Right. Reverend Davis, to you, what other sources of revenue would you support?
I just want to start. The first person I met with was someone from the board when I decided to run for mayor, was a person from the Board of Investment and Taxation, to just ask, what has been the nature of the conversation about how do we generate revenue? And it was sad to hear that conversation wasn't as broad or as deep. And so I think there really does need to be some real conversation about how do we generate revenue. I am concerned about the possibility of an income tax, but we need to look at other things like a wealth tax or perhaps a land value tax that the state legislature was debating in the last session. How do we make sure that we are finding ways to generate revenue? But I also want to just speak to this idea of fiscal stewardship. You know, that is a very important piece of this puzzle, and it doesn't help that we have had since 2019 to spend money out to pay misconduct payments for police misconduct. Again, that goes to the point of how are we looking at this as a total package? Certainly, we have to generate revenue. Certainly, we have to be good fiscal stewards. But one of the things that we just found out in the last week, that we cannot even support something as important as stable homes, stable schools, because we have a $3 million shortfall, when in the last few years, we've been spending out millions and millions of dollars in payouts for police misconduct.
Right.
We got to get at that stewardship writ large so that we can make sure that we are using the taxpayers' dollars efficiently and effectively.
Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance to respond to that in a second, but I want to get Chaz Hampton, your thoughts on alternative revenue sources for the city of Minneapolis.
Yeah, what I think residents don't always know is 30% of the dollars we spend are from those property taxes. 70% are from other things like bonding, federal dollars, etc. We have to lean into that 70% piece of the pie to ensure that we're maximizing and squeezing every penny out from other partners that can provide us dollars before raising more and more on our residents. And to the next part, when we are raising money or raising the levy on our residents, what we have to understand is that we have to deliver the services in concert to that raise. Let me talk specifically. If we are going to spend $5 million on more deeply affordable housing, that's a made-up number, not a specific one, $5 million on that, we have to say these are the amount of units we plan to build. And if we fall short of that, we have to do an assessment of why we fell short. And if we do not fall short of that and we do better, then we need to invest deeper in that. And yes, it starts with those core solutions, but we have to not only quantify publicly the goals for the dollars that we're spending, then reallocate them in the next budget cycle according to the success metrics that we see after.
Right. Senator Fateh, and then I'll give the mayor 30 seconds to respond to. Are you okay with that one? Okay. Your thoughts on alternative revenue sources for the city of Minneapolis?
Absolutely, and it's critical not to burden, especially our working families. What I've heard loud and clear from neighbors is that with the skyrocket of prices in groceries, rent, healthcare costs, we see SNAP benefits getting cut for our most vulnerable communities. Right now, more than ever, we got to think creatively as a city, and that's going to include, yes, exploring a local wealth tax so that we can tax those that are, we can have a local wealth tax. But I want to say one thing, that we know that we have a hostile federal government right now, and because of some of the policies that we all support, they want to cut funding for cities like Minneapolis. Yes. And so it's going to take a cross-jurisdictional approach, working with the county and state to secure extra funding for areas in which we need more help. And there's a reason why the mayor doesn't have a single endorsement at the county level or state level. And that's because he doesn't work well with them. And so we cannot have a city in which we're protecting, especially our most vulnerable communities, our neighbors, if we don't have a mayor that can work with people, especially at the state and county level.
Mayor,
We're
do you
going to
wanna
address.
respond to that? Or go ahead.
Well, I think we can address that.
All I'll say is I'm pretty sure that Governor Walz is at the state level, and I'm proud to have his support.
Our next question is on leadership.
Yeah, leadership style. So leadership style has been an undercurrent of this election. And I think you've gotten this question once before, but describe your leadership style in 1 or 2 words, and we'll start with Jazz.
1 or 2 words.
1 or 2.
Collaborative and pragmatic.
Earnest and compassionate.
Bold and partnership.
Visionary and collaborative.
Okay. Eric, you can start with our final question.
Great. So the final question, we want you to sum up for voters in a minute or so your big idea or vision for the city. But I'm going to sort of tack on to this. This campaign has not focused very much on the built environment of the physical landscape, which is understandable. But I would ask you to think about a big idea you have to shape a portion of the city, or it could be just a random idea. It doesn't have to be your biggest vision, but sort of add that on there. And I don't think we've started with you lately, maybe? Okay, Reverend Davis, why don't we start with you?
Well, I want to start off by saying Minneapolis is a very uniquely situated city to deal with not only our current challenges, but also to think big and to aspire to some things. We are the city of the great Hubert Humphrey, who was bold enough to go into the thing that some would fear to tread, racial equality, making sure that we were dealing with disparities. That's who we are. And so part of what I'm offering and what I want to be a part of is a city that leans into that understanding that we need not fear what an illiberal, autocratic federal government might do, but that we lean into what's best about us, ingenuity, creativity. And that leads to this idea, this big idea. My big idea is, especially someone from North Minneapolis, I see something that I fear too many others don't pay attention to: the great potential and possibility through every corner of the city. And what I would want people to do under my leadership and what we would build up is a city where everybody wouldn't just would be at pains to just focus on one part of the city. It wouldn't be just downtown or North Loop. It would be every part of the city that I'm so afraid to miss, because everywhere you turn, you will find a thriving, beautiful community. And so we really have to tap into. Right now, we are run by a factionalism that pits big business against working people. But we're also a city where we have extreme poverty that sits next to entrenched wealth. And what we have to do as a city and as a leader, we have to figure out, how do we make all of this work for everybody here, not only to save ourselves in this sense, but also to forecast to the country what's possible and what we know we can be.
Thank you. Senator Fateh?
Yeah, and I appreciate what the Reverend said right now, and I wholeheartedly agree. And right now, it seems like we are living in 2 versions of Minneapolis: one for the wealthy and the well-connected, and another for everyone else: the transit riders, the immigrants, our students, our young people. One side gets promises and contracts and connections, and another side gets broken promises, and vetoes. And so we have a vision in which we have a mayor that fully supports our public schools, is a champion for our public schools, even if we don't have that much power over it. But showing up to the Capitol, talking to our E12 committee members, saying we need more funding, standing with our teachers. It includes having an ambitious youth agenda, supporting our kids, making sure we have youth jobs and having youth programming. It includes ending poverty wages in the city of Minneapolis forever. We can make that happen. It's not about, but at the same time, we got to prioritize our working families first. And that means not doing things like supporting stadiums or putting tax dollars into our stadiums, but how do we protect our stadium workers? How do we protect the hospitality workers that our tourists and our neighbors go to downtown to the surrounding stadium areas and help our local economy thrive by spending their money at our local bars and our restaurants and the hotels? How do we support better our climate goals, investing in things like zero waste? Those are the things that we want to tackle in our vision as a city. But we have to, again, with a hostile federal government, we need a cross-jurisdictional approach more than ever. And again, I said earlier, there's a reason why the mayor doesn't have a single state legislator or a county commissioner, is because he's either unwilling or incapable to do so.
Thank you. Mayor Frey, and respond to that while you're responding to the other question, I suppose, too. Well, you already did, I guess, once, but if you want to again.
Look, I did. I think everybody knows what's going on here. There is a coalition of 3 people, all who were instructing their supporters to rank, in part, Senator Omar Fateh, my primary challenger. And here's the thing. People are smarter than that. They're smart enough to know that they can think for themselves. They're also smart enough to recognize the big vision that we have for our future. To answer your question, I could talk about Awamni Amni Okadiapi on the falls, making sure that we're giving land back to our Native community and true ownership. I could talk about the Upper Harbor Terminal, where the first time in multiple generations we're finding ways to open the riverfront up to our north side. I could talk about how we did, in fact, knock down the Kmart, and we are opening up Nicollet Mall, bringing new life into the place. But, you know, what I'm thinking about right now is the fact that just this morning, for maybe the second time, I took my 2 daughters into daycare, which is a lot harder than taking one, believe me. And this next year, my first daughter, Frida, is going to be attending kindergarten. The partnership with our public schools is critical. We have a program called Stable Homes, Stable Schools, which has successfully housed over 6,700 kids in our Minneapolis public school system and beyond. But we can make sure that this partnership goes even further, making sure that we've got wraparound services, making sure that we've got recreational opportunities, making sure that every single kid, regardless of what zip code you come from, who you are, who your parents were, you can be a success. I'm running for mayor because I love this city and I love my family, and I know you love this city and your families as well, and we need to make sure that we realize every bit of potential for them.
Thank you. Janice?
And just want to, is this our closing statement? I just want.
It's not really. We're trying to mix it
Okay.
up a little bit. I mean, it's
No.
kind of the last question, but it's not meant to be
Gotcha.
a closing statement. So give us something different.
Yeah, my big idea or vision being the question. I'll build off of what the mayor was just saying. I have 3 children that are in the Minneapolis public school system right now. And often people say the school board controls the budget and the buildings, and that's true from a logistics standpoint. But we need to be here to wrap our arms around this system. My 3 kids, my wife works incredibly hard as a mother and as a person that works outside of the home as well. We have to pay $1,600 a month to send them to before and after school care at the Minneapolis public school system. It wasn't tenable. We had to pull our daughter out of that. It doesn't financially make sense. That is a family that is struggling, and I know that we are not the only ones in the city of Minneapolis struggling to ensure that our kids are going to be successful in the schools and that financially it's viable to raise them here. And here's the thing. That's so much more than just making sure they get a good education. It's how people look on Zillow when they're going to decide where they're going to move to and what they filter by. It's how we ensure that the people that are working in the coffee shops and are the next business builders in our city are going to receive an education as well. And it's also what's preventing so many people from enrolling in our public schools or staying in this city at all. We have to wrap our arms around this public school system, and we have to do it right now. And frankly, my 3 kids being there has made it ever more evident for me. We're short over $300 million in funding that otherwise would go to those schools if all of our children and residents in this city also went to those schools. We've waited too long to take bold action around this, especially when we're talking about the graduation rates of our Black students in the city of Minneapolis as well. I'm excited to do that work, and that is my big vision. Partnering with Hennepin County to make more of those buildings open to before and after school programs, ensuring that it's financially viable, also driving down crime in the process.
Yeah.
That's my big idea for this city.
Well, thank you very much. And that's going to do it for the NPR News Minnesota Star Tribune Mayoral Forum for the city of Minneapolis. Thank you, Jacob Frey, Omar Fateh, DeWayne Davis, and Jazz Hampton. And also thanks to my co-moderator, Eric Roper of the Minnesota Star Tribune. This debate was produced by Matt Alvarez, Jeff Jones, and Brian Baxt. We could not bring you this debate without the help from a lot of folks in the NPR News events and technical teams, and from the Star Tribune, adding their expertise. Politics Friday with Brian Baxt will be back next week to recap the election results. I'm Brandt Williams. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
I think we're out. Candidates, feel free to stick around. We have some reporters here.